Hello, beautiful people. As is most obvious to you, perfumes and handbags are two things I very much enjoy. I'm someone who has a deep appreciation for design, quality, and craftsmanship when it comes to my fragrances and bags. I'm not immune to the weight and power of the brand either, even though I like to tell myself I'm not. You'd think, as a result, that I'd be as unsupportive of fragrance clones as I am of fake designer handbags, but interestingly, you'd be wrong. Just a little. Let me start off by explaining how I classify handbags that are not original. First, we have replica handbags. These fake or counterfeits deliberately and unabashedly try to imitate the original, right down to all the details, including, and most importantly, branding. You might find knockoffs that are easy to spot at first glance, or you might find a super fake, which might even trick the experts. The obvious example that is most often copied is the classic Chanel flap handbag in black caviar or lambskin leather, either the reissue or the CC turnlock that Karl Lagerfeld introduced in the 80s. So I don't have either of those bags. I don't have them because I cannot afford them, and to be honest, I don't like the idea of carrying that much money around on my shoulder in a handbag, let alone as a handbag. But I do love this bag, so would I buy a fake? Well, the idea has tempted me, and believe it or not, I did buy a fake Chanel item kind of by accident some time ago. But no, I would not buy a fake, and here are 5 reasons why I think you probably shouldn't either. First, fake equals replica equals counterfeit equals illegal. In some places, I believe it's illegal to buy in addition to sell counterfeit items. Don't quote me on that though. But if you travel abroad and you come back to Japan and it's found that you have some counterfeit item and you get caught, you'll be in trouble. Number 2, most of the fakes on the market are overpriced for what they are, and they tend to be of low quality. Number 3, there are ethical concerns, not only in the fact that fakes copy someone else's artistic work, but also regarding their production. In fact, there are ethical concerns surrounding the production of all brands of handbags at various price points, just to be clear. But Chanel bags are not stitched together in sweatshops. As for the leather and other materials that they use, however, that is something I know little about, but you might want to find out more. Number 4, if you don't care what others think, this doesn't matter, but be prepared to be judged negatively by some people who might have their own strong opinions about both fake as well as authentic and very pricey handbags. And number 5, even if your bag is a so-called super fake, a copycat, which is hard to distinguish from the original, even up close, you will know it's a fake, even if no one else knows or cares. Now, maybe this won't be an issue for you, but in my case, I did find that it bothered me. Interestingly, though, it doesn't bother me at all when wearing a clone perfume. I think that might be due to the intangible nature, which I'll talk about later. So what can you do instead of buying a fake? Well, what I would do rather than purchase from Chanel and forgo any chance of vacation of the next decade is to buy a model that looks very similar from another brand for less money, sometimes a lot less money. This bag here, Zhejiang, you've seen it many times on my channel. This is called an inspired bag. It's a Rebecca Minkoff Jumbo Love flat bag. So actually, it's more inspired by the Chanel boy bag than the classic flap that I mentioned, but still, you get the point. Now, in this case, the quality is not exactly there in my opinion, but there might be better inspired bags out there to consider. Now, if the inspired bag did not 100% cut it for you, designer-wise, you could opt to dabble a little closer to the ethically problematic edge. I have this extremely inspired bag right here, one that was so affordable that I unabashedly took liberties with it to force it to accommodate my body. I butchered the strap and inserted the leather piece to make it fit to my liking. Now, I would certainly never do that to a real Chanel. And side note, you'd think that for the prices Chanel charges, they would make bespoke chain lengths, but no. This is what you call a dupe bag. It lies between a fake and an inspired bag. There's no branding, and even if there were, it wouldn't be Chanel. However, it's blatantly copying Chanel. Ethically, that's dubious, but it's not to the point of illegality, just to let you know. This purchase, by the way, was my personal middle finger to Chanel during the price raises during the pandemic in 2020, and they continue to go up, as you know. So this is also a flat bag with quilting. It has a reissue style chain. It's a standard turn lock with the turn lock closure here, and it has the same overall shape as a real Chanel, but the size and dimensions are probably not the same as anything produced by Chanel. Chanel unlikely has ever come out with any quilting that looks exactly like this, nor do I think Chanel has ever had any textures or hardware like this. So this bag is not a fake or a replica or a counterfeit. It's a dupe, but it is ethically dubious, right? I mean, it looks a lot like a Chanel. When you get up close to it, it's pretty obvious it's not, though. I don't have any issue with the idea of a dupe, especially when the dupe is for a bag that realistically only a tiny fraction of the world's population purchases on a casual Sunday shop out. To me, this is obviously not a Chanel, so I have no problem wearing it. If anyone comments on it, positive, neutral, or negative, I'm quick to say that it indeed looks like a Chanel, but it most certainly is not. But I think it looks good, and I like it, and I do use it. There is a minus with this bag that bites at my conscience, though, and that's the fact that I did purchase it through a Chinese website, and I have no easy way to find out what chemicals were used, who made it, or how it was made. So for that reason, and also for the reason of the quality being relatively low, I do think inspired bags are better choices than dupes, and certainly better than fakes. When it comes to fragrances, however, I often prefer clones to similar inspired fragrances, and I even stand by the purchase of a clone over the original in many cases. While I don't go out of my way to support perfume clone houses, I'm not against them either. With perfume, you can indeed also find different degrees of copying, but the vernacular used is different. Here we have a deliciously huge bottle of the original Maison Francis Kirk de Jean Baccarat Rouge 540, or BR 540 as I call it. Next, we have one of the many fragrances on the market now that were inspired by Baccarat Rouge 540. This is a celebrity fragrance called Cloud. It's pretty obvious that it's called Cloud. I think it's a celebrity. The celebrity's name is Ariana Grande. Probably you know her more than me. Actually, when I bought this, I didn't even know who she was. That's how out of it I am. Anyway, this is sweeter, much cheaper, and doesn't perform at all like the original. But there's no doubt, at least in the fragrance community, where the inspiration for Cloud came from. Now, you could argue that Baccarat Rouge 540 is indeed a new type of fragrance, and that other perfumers or perfume houses or big brands are aiming to follow that trend, not this specific fragrance. But I'm not convinced. Even if that were true, there is no doubt that Baccarat Rouge 540 is the leader, and Cloud is one of the many, many followers. To me, Cloud is to Baccarat Rouge 540 as my Rebecca Minkoff is to a Chanel boy bag. But Cloud might be called a dupe of Baccarat Rouge 540, just as a fragrance clone of 540 might be. Because fragrances can't be seen or touched, a fragrance clone is analogous to both a handbag dupe and a handbag replica. This bottle here is from a well-known clone house called Alexandria. It's not Baccarat Rouge 540. The juice in here is a clone for Frederic Malle's Portrait of a Lady. But this same company and many more, because Baccarat Rouge 540 is that popular, make a clone of Baccarat Rouge 540. I used to have an inspired bottle of Baccarat Rouge from this company, but I used it up. I couldn't tell the difference, and I don't think others would be able to tell the difference either. I then went out and bought the real McCoy, though, in a huge bottle form, for two reasons. First, I got my bottle here for a really good price secondhand, and therefore I could afford it. And second, after I tested enough with the clone, I knew that I would love the original. Testing is one justification people often make for buying clones. Obviously, it's proved true with my example here. There are other reasons why I more readily accept perfume clones to fake fashion. The main reason is that cloning is not illegal as long as certain rules are followed. It surprised me in doing background reading for this video how many blog posts I read that warned people to avoid counterfeit perfumes because they contain harmful ingredients and are created in poor working conditions. Well, there's no such thing as a counterfeit perfume, and in regard to ingredients and working conditions, both original and clone houses can potentially fall under such criticism. Some are better than others, and if you care about these things, then due diligence is recommended, regardless of whether or not the perfume is a clone. Anyway, allow me to share a story. A few years back, I had the privilege of attending a course in perfumery, which took place in Dubai. I had a great experience and I learned a lot, not least that I don't have any obvious natural talent at perfumery. Because I was in the Middle East, I met a lot of people also taking the course from the region. Among them, an Iranian perfumer based in the Emirates who had his own perfume cloning company. I've purchased and already used up several clones directly from him. They were amazing and very affordable. Now, what this lovely Iranian told me is that established perfume companies, not necessarily the brand names, by the way, but whomever holds the legal rights to the concoction, in fact, sell or license their recipes or list of ingredients at least to some capacity. I'm guessing here, but perhaps the sources of the ingredients are not disclosed, and maybe the quality of the ingredients might be a factor in determining the result, and or perhaps the recipe lacks all the details. I don't know. But he told me that he can legally reproduce the fragrance so long as different enough packaging and branding are used. I assume the legalities are laid out clearly. Now, it could also be that some clone houses have perfumers who are talented enough to play around to the point where they can come close to the original. Massam Raza of Dua Fragrances uses technology to get exceptionally close to the original. With his team of chemists, he works to identify the molecular code of a given fragrance using a gas chromatography mass spectrometry. It's called a GCMS machine. So this machine formulates the list of ingredients, and then Rasa adds whatever else he thinks the perfume needs to effectively recreate the original scent. Apparently, no clone house has of yet made a 100% clone of a perfume. Rasa's closest is approximately 98.2, but that's more than enough to fool most noses. And I find it interesting that clone houses often not only avoid use of the word clone, but instead elect to use words like inspired by XYZ. Inspiration is a euphemism for imitation here, obviously. In fact, whether a clone house buys or steals or comes up with their own formula, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And that's because most fragrance houses cannot trademark their formulas. Perfumes are considered too abstract to be subject to trademark laws, at least in the US. As long as a clone is not marketed in such a way as to confuse the consumer into thinking it's the original, then there's pretty much no recourse for luxury brands who are keen on prosecuting a clone perfumer or house. And yes, this includes the infamous Chanel No. 5. In a nutshell, I guess that perfume clones are more like handbag dupes than handbag replicas, if that makes sense. Sometimes if they're not really close, I'd call them perfume inspirations. So the really good ones are dupes. But yeah, just because something is not illegal doesn't mean it isn't unethical. But the lines are blurry, my friends. I recently read a post on fragrance cloning from Otherwise Philosophy. Otherwise Philosophy is the name of the blog or the website. And the writer did a good job of briefly weighing several sides to the fragrance clone debate. And one viewpoint in the article says, "It's this consumerist question that keeps me and lots of other perfume folks on the teeter-totter about fragrance clones. The exorbitant prices charged by the most impersonal, corporatized, fat cat perfume houses. Some of the perfume giants are having their capitalist cake and eating it too. And this segues into my second reason for more readily accepting perfume clones to handbag fakes, and that is that they're less threatening. Perfume clones are, in many or most cases, not so threatening to the original brand, although this is just my opinion, and this may change. Unlike handbags, perfumes are not visual or textural in the literal sense, and I've understood that a lot of counterfeit handbags in the marketplace can have the effect of diluting a brand. This is probably why Chanel legally went after a few counterfeiters a few years back. They were probably threatened more by the increasing number of passable superfakes than the obvious imitators, though, I suspect. I wonder, however, about the extent to which this is true for perfume. Unlike a handbag, you can't see or touch fragrance, although in the brain, it might indeed have color, texture, or convey some sort of imagery. Since formulae aren't copyright protected, it makes sense that more and more clones would appear in a growing perfume market. The intangible nature of fragrance means that there's less concrete proof of imitation as well, especially when the clone is so close. Nonetheless, I don't think original creators of luxury houses are in danger, at least not just yet. I believe most people who buy perfume are driven by branding, the marketing, the advertising, and all the promises they contain. They want to buy the real thing, not solely because of what it actually smells like, but because of what it represents and promises. A real bottle of Baccarat Rouge 540 to most people, even many perfume junkies, is not the same as a clone, even if the juice inside is almost identical. The packaging and the branding are still very visceral, very important to the sale, especially when perfume is purchased as a gift. I think it's obvious that the main reasons people buy fragrance clones are financial in nature. They either can't afford the original or simply don't want to pay that much for the original. And this is true for handbags too, but in the case of perfume, my guess is that people who buy clones care more about how the perfume smells than how it is presented or packaged and what brand it is. And I wouldn't say that they're dissing the perfumer of the original either. Perfumers are typically employed by one of the 6 main fragrance companies, not fragrance houses, and they are paid with a salary. They don't get royalties. In any case, I don't feel that consumers of clone perfumes are part of the target demographic for a given perfume brand. If a person buys a clone perfume, that doesn't mean they would have purchased the original if the clone didn't exist. While this is probably also true for some handbags, I don't think the situation is the same still. Everyone knows the Chanel flat bag. The fact that it is so out of reach for so many people is part and parcel of its allure and desirability, I think. And this is true for many top tier designer handbags. That can't be said for perfume, I think, at least as far as I know. I mean, there's some crazy price perfume, it's true, but not everybody knows about them. Okay, perhaps Baccarat Rouge 540 is not the best example because it has indeed become so popular that it's punctured into the mainstream market. But unlike with a widely known handbag, I do think that unless you are a scent gourmand or a fume head, you're not going to lust over or even know about some of the higher end perfumes and fragrance brands. Designer fashion is relatively more known. Again, an argument I hear against clone fragrances is that they disrespect the perfumer. Maybe not so much the employed perfumer, but the perfumer who owns his or her own brand. But listen, I don't think Francis Kirdejean here is being harmed by people getting clones of his fragrances. I mean, one of the dupes out there, it's not a clone, it's a dupe, was actually, he's the same perfumer. It's, what is that, Burberry Her. It's very similar to this, and he's the perfumer. But that's aside. I mean, I really don't think he's being threatened by them. His brand overall is so big that any loss from clone purchases would be a drop in the bucket, I think. And if the clones didn't exist, I reckon many more or most of the clone buyers would not buy his perfume anyway due to the price point. They would either get an inspired fragrance from another house or just not buy it all. Now, it's a different story with very small perfume houses like Rania J, for example. I love her perfumes and they aren't exactly cheap. I wouldn't buy a clone because I want to support her, but also she's so small that I don't think any company produces a clone of her concoctions, at least to my knowledge. If a perfume is being cloned, it's cloned because it's both well-known and massively popular. Have you ever wondered, by the way, how clone houses can offer such relatively low prices? Sure, although increasingly less so, luxury brands may have pricey natural ingredients, and clone houses may opt for the cheaper lab versions of those ingredients. The global perfume market is valued at over $31 billion last I checked, and that's from a few years ago. And I think around 90% of what you pay for in big name perfume is the packaging and the marketing, the bottling of that scent. The global perfume market is huge. Clone houses are notorious for their understated, putting it kindly, presentation, and many engage in much more influencer marketing. They don't have the big budget for big ads or commercials. Most mainstream designer perfumes are not priced insanely high, though. Personally, I would never buy clones of mainstream designer perfumes, but for some people, the lower price point makes a huge difference to them, and I don't think those big mainstream brands are hurt much by it. For me, when I buy a clone, I want to blind buy or try it out a very expensive, likely niche or edition privée type of perfume that I really want, and I don't have the means to get it, financially the means or even the accessibility here in Japan. I may go on to buy the original or not. This clone of Frédéric Malle is good enough for me. That brand's pricing is out of my ballpark, and obviously I do adore A Portrait of a Lady, but not as much as Baccarat Rouge 540. It's amazing how much has changed in the world of perfumery since my childhood years. Perhaps it's about time luxury level fine perfumery got a taste of what it was like for the French wine industry in the 70s when California's cheap but amazing Napa Valley wines jumped onto the scene. Some of the perfumes coming out of clone houses these days are honestly amazing. Although I don't think the big names are being threatened yet, they very well could be in the future. Knockoff perfumes have apparently been growing at a faster rate than that of the entire fragrance industry. And whether you think of the clone houses as vultures or as Robin Hoods, I think they're probably here to stay. I created a new page on my fragrance blog, which is called scentgourmand.com, by the way, with links to about 20 different clone houses. I plan to keep it updated to reflect any changes or additions, so if you're interested in visiting some of the clone houses with which I'm familiar, do check it out. I'll link to it below. Okay, that's it for today, my lovelies. I know many of you are into bags, not so much with frags, but I'm curious to know your opinions on fragrance clone houses. You might be a lot less or more forgiving of their existence than I am, and please tell me what you think below. I look forward to reading what you have to say, and perhaps others will too. See you in my next video. Scent Gourmand, signing out. Mwah.